Good afternoon. I'm Jim Kirk, publisher and executive editor of Crain's Chicago Business, and welcome to our custom virtual event, Wealth Management, Staying the Course. I'm excited to moderate today's discussion as we hear from an impressive group of leaders. We're very happy you are all with us today. The event is presented by Bartlett Wealth Management, BMO Wealth Management, Cruise Asset Management, and the law firm of Neil Gerber Eisenberg. And today we'll talk in depth about issues and concerns of today's investors, potential impacts of the current economic environment, and ways individuals can prepare themselves and their assets for what's ahead. Please join me in welcoming today's panelists. First, Robert Dearborn, CFA, is Director and Senior Portfolio Manager at Bartlett Wealth Management, a registered investment advisory firm founded in 1898. With offices in Chicago and Cincinnati, the firm provides customized financial planning and investment management services, followed an unbiased holistic approach. Next, Katie Florig, CFA, CFP, is North Shore Managing Director at BMO Wealth Management US, which combines the capabilities and expertise of BMO Harris Financial Advisors, BMO Private Bank, and BMO Family Office. She has more than 25 years of experience bringing wealth solutions to individuals, families, and foundations. Next, we have Stuart Cruz, CFA, President of Cruise Asset Management. He created the firm in 2007 from a formulation model designed to outperform the typical results garnered within financial markets. He currently advises fintech companies, White Charts, and Eon, and earlier in his career worked at Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers as a portfolio manager and investment advisor, respectively. And our final panelist today is Eric Mann, CPA, a partner in the private wealth practice group at Neil Gerber Eisenberg, one of the largest single office law firms in the country. He counsels families, business owners, executives, and individuals on all aspects of estate planning, as well as the legal implications of major life events, such as premarital and succession planning. So I'd like to first ask each of you to take a minute to tell us briefly about your firm and its role in wealth management. Bob, would you like to start?
I would. Thank you very much, Jim, and I appreciate being on this panel, and thanks for the initial introduction to Bartlett Wealth Management. Bartlett Wealth Management is a fee-based registered investment advisor, and as you mentioned, Jim, we have offices in Chicago and Cincinnati. You also mentioned that the firm's been around and was founded in 1898, so we've been in this business for a long, long time. And our primary focus is working with private clients, and that would include individuals and families, multi-generations of families, high-earning professionals, business owners, foundations, and retirement plans. And our key premise, particularly in working with individuals and their families, is that we bring a holistic wealth management approach, which we think is essential for our clients who have fairly complex financial lives. And what we mean by that is that we have an in-depth financial planning capability, which doesn't mean 80 pages of data and so on, but it does mean working with our clients on issues that are important to their financial lives, whether it be budgeting, Social Security management, tax planning, estate planning review, and the like. And we bring that planning, and it helps inform the investment management of their portfolio. So the combination of those two practices are really the key strength of Bartlett. We've been doing this, working with clients all over the country, and in fact, we have clients all over the world. And our view is that our clients should expect and deserve a very customized approach to how we work with them. And they deserve a very personal relationship with various members of our team, and that's what we bring to them. And the whole objective, of course, is to bring successful results to those investors, our clients, both near term and longer term.
Great, Bob, thanks. Katie, how about you?
Hi, Jim, thank you, and thank you for the invitation to this event. We're so pleased, BMO is so pleased to be a part of it. BMO is a institution that's been around 200 plus years, and in the wealth management business, we run the gamut, as it was described, from our financial advisor services, all the way up to our kind of family office, ultra high-end wealth clients. So the wealth management services that I represent are our private wealth services, and these are really services that run the gamut for our investors. It's not just investing services that we provide, but it's really access to planning across the board. That can be tax planning, that can be estate planning, intergenerational wealth transfer, business succession planning. We certainly do loans, lines of credit, various different services for business owners. We do try and team up with our commercial partners to make sure that we're helping business owners, not just from the business point of view, but looking at how different business decisions or business succession plans might affect the personal side too. So it's really trying to help the customer from top to bottom and look at things from a number of different angles.
That's great. Thanks. Stuart, can you tell us a little bit about your firm?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We have not been in business over 200 years. My mom lives in a house that's 200 years old, if that counts for anything. I've been around since 2007. Cruise Asset Management was founded in 2007 based off the principles that using math and statistics and taking our biases out of our financial decision making, it leads to better financial decision making and better portfolio construction. So it was all created off of a systematic strategy that when I looked around our world, when I was working at Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns prior, we had a lot of portfolio managers that were underperforming and what I would call investing by committee, and there was no real advantage over some of the other firms. And so because of my math background, I took it upon myself to do a bunch of research and found that there are indeed a lot of characteristics that tend to lead towards outperformance that also tend to be ignored in the marketplace by the traditional way you run portfolios. And so that's how Cruise Asset Management was founded, all on using math and statistics. So all of our decisions are made with a mathematical or statistical advantage in mind. So when a client calls me and said, why did you buy the stock? Why did you get in and out of this asset class? I have a mathematical reason for it. It's not that I woke up on the right side or wrong side of the bed that day and decided to get in and out of Coke or Apple. So that's what we feel like. Statistical decision making is the route to a better future.
Great. And finally, Eric, can you tell us a little bit about the work in the firm related to wealth management?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me here today. Gerber & Eisenberg has started off as a tax boutique and in 1986. And what it did over time is added other corporate, other legal practice groups around it to support all of our business owners. Historically, the private wealth service group at Neil Gerber & Eisenberg was the port for all of our largest clients. And when those clients would come in, and they would disperse throughout the firm for their other needs. And as a result, the private wealth practice group at Neil Gerber & Eisenberg is the engine of the firm. And as a result, we're able to accomplish a lot with all of our clients and make sure that they're serviced with all their needs as a business owner, as a family. And the unique thing about Neil Gerber is that we are the birthplace for a lot of estate planning techniques that everyone uses today. So for example, the predecessor to our firm invented the first insurance trust that everyone uses every day. And we continue to innovate and strategize with our clients to put them in the best position possible to transfer wealth in the most tax efficient manner and address all their other needs as their business or their life brings to them.
Great. Well, welcome all of you guys. I'm really looking forward to digging in here as most folks tuned in are right now. Obviously, a lot going on. So, it's the first question I want to pose to all of you. Really, what's the most common issue or concern you're hearing from clients at this moment? I'd like to hear from each of you. I'm sure it's be some common things and some things that are a little different. But Katie, do you want to start us off with that?
Sure. What we hear right now is am I doing this right? Am I positioned right? You know, is what I'm doing appropriate given everything that's going on? And that is a very fair concern. You know, what we really try and do is make sure that when we're working with our clients, we know exactly what it is they're trying to accomplish. And that might be from an investment perspective, but it really might be something much broader than that. It might be wealth transfer to their kids. It might be charitable intentions that they have. And so what we keep trying to come back to when we get that question is, well, let's go back to what it is you're trying to accomplish, and let's run some different scenarios. If you do this, then what happens? I think by running those scenarios, not only from an investment perspective, but from a tax perspective and or estate planning perspective, if we keep kind of coming back to those same decision trees, then we know that we're making the right decisions and we're moving in the right direction. And so I think it boils down to really knowing your clients very well, and so that you can offer them advice that's really tailored for what it is that they're trying to accomplish.
Bob, want to take a crack at this? The most common issue or concern you're hearing right now?
I would. Thank you, Jim. This is obviously, since mid-February, been a very disturbing period of time for investors. It has been uncomfortable. We know that, but you know, all bear markets are. And I guess if you had asked us, we had this panel 2 months ago, Jim, the most common concern would have been, you know, we feel like we're on a roller coaster going 60 miles an hour and without a seatbelt on. And where is this going, and so on. And that was the case in late February, early March, up until about March 23rd. And then, of course, the investment markets have performed quite well and retraced a good portion of that decline. But we all look out in the world and we all see the same thing, and we see the bleak economic statistics that are so disturbing, whether it's employment or our small businesses or what have you. And people are now sort of seeing the investment markets and the economy decouple. And why is that? And what's the risk of the markets pulling back and the economy going into a second leg down? And so I think that decoupling has been a real head scratcher. Now, we know historically, at least, that the investment markets do lead the economy, both on the downside typically, and certainly on the upside here. So, you know, the markets are suggesting, I think, at the moment that we might see better economic conditions a year or so from now. But that's a concern for people because they see what's going on out there in the world. And I think the other sort of more on the ground kind of an issue to investors now, and we work with people both investing in equities, fixed income, short-term reserves, and other financial assets, is the ultra low interest rates are really a challenge right now for fixed income investors, for bond investors. And how do you go about trying to get decent fixed income returns without taking unnecessary risks? And so, you know, that combination of where the market is and where the economy is, and then these low rates, we're receiving calls, and rightfully so, from many of our clients on those topics.
Stuart, what's the most common issue you're hearing?
I just think there's a lot of fear. I mean, forget the market itself. Out in the public, you hear a lot of fear. I get fear from people all over the place, afraid to, got neighbors and friends that are literally afraid to open up their window because they're afraid to breathe in a virus. And so I think that's spilling over to a lot of people's psyche. And honestly, the way we're handling this is trying to stay in great communication with them. I try to put out a video in the beginning every other day to talk about what we're seeing in the marketplace, what we think people should be doing, what we are doing to protect their portfolio. Now it is kind of relaxed a little bit now that people are getting more used to the coronavirus and COVID-19 being in the news. I think that's just I'm a big student of behavioral finance when it comes to managing a portfolio statistically. You have to understand the other side, the emotional side of portfolio management, because not everybody really wants to make decisions by math. And so when things are fear-based, you really have to talk to that person in their language that they can really understand. And that's what you're just seeing a lot. So we're really communicating with our clients quite a bit. And now that they're getting more and more familiarity breeds some sort of security, they're kind of starting to act a little bit more, I'll go with rationally as opposed to irrationally in the beginning.
Eric, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I have a completely different perspective. I usually get calls from clients saying that I have this wonderful portfolio of assets. They're unbelievably depressed in value. I don't want to gift it out to my kids because the market may drop another 20%. What do? If I make a $10 million gift today, the market drops 20%, I just lost $2 million for my gift exemption. Well, this is the technique we've been telling our clients to do every day since the pandemic started. It's called a grantor retained annuity trust, short GRAT. I'm going to say it again, grantor retained annuity trust. And the way this works is if I were to put $10 million into a trust, I get back an annuity stream equal to that $10 million plus an IRS interest rate, which is in June is 0.6%. So if I set this up, a 5-year GRAT, and get payments back over the term, and the rate of return on my 401k has been 7.5% for the last 10 years, and includes the recent March and April performances. So if I take 10 million, get an annuity stream back, what I'll have left at the end of the day is $2.8 million that I had passed to my kids tax-free. If the market were to tank and the performance of that GRAT is not going to beat that hurdle rate, no harm, no foul, I get the assets back, but I haven't touched my exemptions. So that in this environment has become the most powerful tool in our arsenal to shift wealth from clients that are nervous that we're going to have a second wave, a second drop in the market, and don't want to touch their gift exemptions.
Right. Next question for Bob and Katie. What other impacts of the current uncertain economic situation are you dealing with your practice specifically? Bob, do you want to take that?
Right, I'll start on that, Jim. I think that this new environment that we've been in for the last 6 weeks or so, this remote work environment, has really necessitated a much higher level of communication with our clients and the use of technology. At Bartlett, we were always had good, strong IT capability, but we've had to even up that capacity to a much higher level. And so I think this environment that we're in has really put a premium, again, sort of as Stuart mentioned, on communication with clients. And we're doing it in different ways, and we're using new levels of technology to reach out. I mean, obviously, conferences like this, we're having meetings with clients virtually all the time now, blogs and messages in different formats, and just trying to use technology in a way that is effective and is meeting the type of standards that our clients expect. And I think longer term, this is probably a good thing in terms of technology capacity. But our business has been baptized by fire on this, and I've really been pleased at how we've been able to accommodate that need. And so I think that this world that we're in has really raised so many different issues that we're all grappling with, but that's one that I think has been a real challenge, but in a way has been very effective for us.
Great. Katie?
Sure. There are a couple different things that I think this environment has caused us to kind of reassess, and some of that is really working to start with business owners. So we have processed, something like 2,000 paycheck protection plan loans for business owners. But I think really working with not only business owners, but individual clients to really think through and be vigilant in some cash flow planning, because it's easy to, when the market is constantly going up, to want to always have that reinvested in the market, and making sure that you really have a good formula in place for liquidity should you need it, because the last thing you want to do is have to liquidate some asset class at an inopportune time. And so both for the business owner and the kind of individual client, it's really thinking through not just 3 months, but 6 months down the road, a year down the road. If things get dislodged or something changes with your employment, or something just changes where you don't want to make adjustments to the portfolio, how do we really help you from a cash flow perspective? And, it's using those low rates to your advantage. So there are a ton of different tools, investment lines of credit, lending is a great time to do it, but it's really thinking through kind of the day-to-day cash environment for our customers.
Katie, what do you see as the potentially most serious negative outcome of today's economic environment? And is there anything individuals can do to prepare for it?
Yeah, I think the biggest negative, I think, is, being caught without a plan in place. And that plan can mean a ton of things depending upon which kind of client you're looking for. But I think not having access to capital when you need capital is a big concern, both for a business owner and for a private client. So it's making sure that you have those safety nets embedded in your plan, and making sure that you stay on top of it. So it's, making sure from a cash flow perspective that you're comfortable and you're going to be able to withstand this market turbulence, or if there are times where you don't want to trade stocks or the bond market freezes up on you, are you able to have access to capital when you need it? Other disruptions, though, sometimes can be things that you meant to do and the world got away from you and you never did it. And so to Eric's point earlier, it's, one of the good things that comes out of events like what we've seen in March and April is it forces people to really kind of reassess what they're trying to do. And maybe it's not just the investment side, but it's your entire wealth plan, it's your estate plan, and those things get stale. And so it does force those conversations, which can be a good thing.
Stuart, same question. Is there anything individuals can do to prepare for something as uncertain as what we're going through right now?
Prepare for it? Well, I think we all have clients that have a variety of different risk levels. And, we've been using, and I've been using this for decades, this strategy that for some reason a lot of brokers don't like to use, where you can invest in the stock market. These are structured products. You can invest in the stock market, take on no risk, have it principally protected, but then get all the upside of the stock market if the market goes up. They are generally very liquid. For instance, if you had a Lehman Brothers structured product, the day Lehman went out of business during the financial crisis, they all paid. So there wasn't a whole lot of risk in these typical products. So when I have clients that say, hey, I don't want to be invested in the stock market because I can't stand the volatility, just give me 100% bonds. In this environment, 100% bonds would be almost horrific for me to think of. And so in order to transition them to a more diversified portfolio, but still have some upside, we employ some of these strategies in place. And there's all sorts of different structures, but that's just the very tip of the iceberg that we use.
Bob, you want to weigh in on, what you see as the potentially most serious negative outcome of today's
I think
uncertain environment?
Yeah, it gets to the uncertainty that's out there. And I mean, the reality is that there is risk in investing no matter what you do. There will always be, whether it's 100% bonds, as Stuart mentioned, you have risk doing that, 100% equities. And I think the risk and the concern right now is simply that we're in a very uncertain environment. And, our belief at Bartlett, at least, is that you have to have a plan that's well thought out and that you can adhere to through these different environments that can sustain itself through downturns like we're going through, that you have the safeguards in place, you have liquidity, you have adequate diversification, you have high quality assets. And again, this is all based on planning and trying to accomplish certain objectives for each specific client, and that you aren't forced to make bad decisions at inopportune times. And, for hypothetically, let's say we get toward year end and everyone is thinking, gee, the virus might come back. And let's say it comes back with a vengeance and in a way that's kind of unexpected to the downside and affects the economy again. We want our clients to be prepared for that, to have those safeguards in place. Similarly, on the upside, we don't want our clients to be seduced into taking excessive risk along the way. So I think that, our view is you sort of have to have an all-weather portfolio that's in sync with what's trying to be accomplished based on the financial planning involved with each client, and you need to adhere to it. If it's well thought out and it's clear and understandable, our feeling is that our clients can withstand most anything, and it's just a matter of adhering to it and sort of staying the course.
Right. Question for all four of you. There's been a lot of focus, obviously, on the low interest rates we're seeing now, and question of how can individuals really take advantage of those low interest rates to build wealth? Eric, are you in on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me give you a simple example. My dad gives me $10 million in the form of a loan. I agree to pay back my dad an interest rate according to the IRS tables at 0.43%. So every year, I'm going to write my dad a check for $43,000 and $10 million I got from him. Now, if I can get Katie, Bob, or Stuart to grow that money at 7.5% every year, at the end of that term, I pay back my dad and walk away with $8.6 million. Now, I could set that structure up so that the interest on that, on each of those payments, is not even taxable. I could have my dad set up a trust for my benefit that's a grantor trust, meaning that it's taxable to him. If it's taxed to him, the interest payments are ignored for federal income tax purposes. And all that future appreciation, that $8.6 million of assets, is out of my dad's estate. But I have the benefit of it. If I did nothing, and my dad had that $10 million plus the future growth, or $18 million, he's paying extra tax on that $8 million at, we'll call it a 50% rate if you're an Illinois resident, or $4.3 million of tax. Using that same strategies, you can start shifting money between good trusts and bad trusts. There are certain trusts that have been in place for a number of decades that they have to end at a certain point. New trusts in Illinois can go on forever. And what we're trying to do is move money from good trusts to bad trusts using these unbelievably low interest rates.
Okay. Bob, do you want to add to that?
Right, and I'll go back to the investment side of it. I'm not going to look at the asset side of the balance sheet, but I think these low interest rates provide incredible opportunities on the liability side for individuals, for businesses that have borrowed money. It's obviously a great opportunity to refinance existing debt. And if we take the case of younger people who are starting families or moving through their early stages of their career, it's an opportunity potentially to buy a home, get a mortgage at a very low rate. And so, for that type of case, it's a real opportunity. In the case of maybe there are people that are looking to buy a business or buy other long-term assets, property, what have you. Again, if you're credit worthy and the banks like BMO Harris are willing to lend money to you, it's a great opportunity to borrow money at low rates. And so, that's, I think, important. And then the other point I would make is exactly what Eric said, and we're doing this from a financial planning standpoint with our clients, looking at wealth transfer opportunities like the grants. The grants are a great opportunity right now. And while people like Eric might put them together legally, it's incumbent upon us in working with our clients on a holistic basis to bring topics like that to the table. And definitely the low rates make a huge difference for that type of service and product.
Great. Stuart, some strategies to build wealth in this environment, this low interest environment?
Sure. Well, clearly refinancing your house, mortgage rates have never been lower actually right now. So that's an obvious one. But what something might be a little bit less obvious is kind of the next level of people who are investing. The VCs and venture capitalists out there are using these low interest rates because they have very low hurdle rates themselves to promote disrupting businesses, just like Uber. They are basically financing Uber so that I can take an Uber from my house to the city at a discounted rate because the transportation costs didn't get any cheaper. So what does that mean for a particular investor is technology, or the investment of a lot of money out there, is going to be chasing a lot of new technology because the interest rates are low. So that is a great spot to be in for the future. The math, again, would suggest that buying growth and high-level technology companies would tend to outperform over time. So if you're looking for a way to slant your portfolio, it would probably be slanting it towards growth. As interest rates go up from, let's say, 0, if they get to 5 or 10%, because we've taken on many more trillions of dollars of loans, some of that venture capital is going to go away. Some of these financed investments are going to go away. So that kind of mechanism won't be in place anymore. So now would be a good time to start slanting your portfolio, or continue your portfolio towards that bent.
Katie, do you want to add to the conversation about the low interest rates, building wealth?
Sure, I'll be brief. A lot of the points that we would make have been covered by the other partners here. Getting any kind of mortgages or refinancing, no-brainers. One of the bigger hurdles that we have is clients that have kind of spent their lives thinking to pay down debt. It's trying to shift the conversation into the fact that debt or leverage is not always a bad thing, and you can really use it to your advantage. And it doesn't have to be a long-term tied up event, but it could just be using short-term lines of credit at historically low rates to help smooth out your cash flow, or just to invest in another opportunity. And so it's making sure that you're using these low debt rates to your advantage and not being scared off by just wanting to avoid debt in general, because we do see that that people certainly are debt averse, but at the rates where they are now, debt can be really a beneficial tool for you.
Katie, beyond the low interest rates, are there other potential silver linings or opportunities in the?
Yes, absolutely. So, everybody knows the misery of a market disruption, but a market disruption brings a ton of opportunities, and it's not just on the investment side. Certainly on the investment side, we have used March to actively harvest losses without changing allocations, so that investors have those losses in their back pocket to go forward. So we can do things like harvest losses. The market downturn was also a tremendous opportunity to try and unload concentrations, and that might be company stock where someone's been working somewhere for 20 or 30 years and they have a ton of a single name. Could be a sector overweight or even a country overweight. So taking advantage of the market turbulence to really try and get portfolios positioned more appropriately going forward, that's certainly an opportunity. The low rates have been a great opportunity to refinance and create leverage where it's necessary. Gifting has, Eric made great points about graphs and some gifting techniques that aren't always at the tops of people's mind. They might remember $15,000 a year they can gift, but they don't think about gifting opportunities that aren't very complex, but often aren't brought to the table. And so it's making sure that we're having those conversations as well. And Stuart had talked about structured notes. That is something that a lot of our clients have really enjoyed because you can, participate in the market with a certain amount of upside, but perhaps know that you're capped or you're buffered at 15% downside protection. And so, the market has really allowed us to do a lot of estate planning strategies with clients, Roth conversions, and even just trying to do some tax planning where if we don't have to have our clients take a large RMD this year and they can waive that required distribution from their IRA to next year, that might change their tax bracket completely if that's a large required distribution that they would have to take. And so it's really making sure that we're looking through a number of different lenses when the market does have these disruptions.
Right. Bob, any other potential silver linings you see in this?
Well, there are definitely silver linings. Katie mentioned the most obvious at the time when the market was down substantially. There were great opportunities for investors to upgrade their portfolios, to buy great companies, great assets at really good valuations that we haven't seen for a while. Beyond that, and I would make the point that we all know that markets like this occur on a regular basis. I mean, we hadn't had one since the Great Recession and so on, but historically, they were every 4 to 5 years or so. We have bear markets and somewhat less declines in between. And for investors, our view is that for investors that have a long runway before retirement, let's take younger investors, even people with 10 years before retirement, this is kind of a gift. You hate to think about it that way because it feels so bad at the time, but it's a bit of a gift to have the opportunity to fund college education plans for your kids, to augment your retirement plans as you're planning for retirement, and just make individual investments. And so I think that's it really was a great opportunity. The other point that I would make that's a little less obvious is that markets like this also bring back into perspective risk. And when you're in just upward moving markets where it's just easy sort of get lulled by it, markets like this that are down force people to reassess or confirm that their risk profile is appropriate. You take speculative excess out of the market, it's kind of a gut check for people. And at least at Bartlett, we're constantly trying to monitor and make sure that the risk profile we have for our clients is appropriate. But when you have downturns like this, it brings back into focus the importance of risk management. And I think that, for some people it was a wake-up call. Hopefully for our clients and for the clients of the panelists, it wasn't the case. But that's not, it's not an unimportant outgrowth of this kind of a market.
Stuart, you seeing other opportunities as well?
Yeah, well, silver linings, I mean, like Katie and Robert both caught everything that I was going to say for the most part, except for, you have obvious things like gas prices are super low, so that helps people, mortgage rates super low. Other things that people don't think about are the illegal drug trafficking, also down. The cartels have been hurt tremendously by this, so that's a silver lining in this whole meltdown. But what I really look at this like is what people take cleanses for their diet. They'll take a juice cleanse, and the reality is a juice cleanse doesn't really do anything for you. If you're on a 3 or 5 day juice cleanse, your liver does a great job of taking care of your body. But what it can do for you is reset your mindset. And similar to what Robert was saying, taking a look at your risk, you have a good chance to reset. Getting back to the basics, for me, it's getting back to family and really understanding, on a holistic view, what's important in life, less Kardashians and more, more things that are important. So also, from, I guess, more of a philosophical point of view, I think a lot of people forget that we're all in this together and that this world is made up of a bunch of people just trying to get along the best they can. And this virus reminded a lot of people of that we're all together.
Great. Eric, any potential silver linings we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah. So if you want to get your estate planner excited, you just have to say these 3 words out loud. Okay. Historically low interest rates, depressed assets, high exemptions. That's it. You want to see your estate planner smile? Just say those 3 words. And I'm doing this intentionally to let you guys know that this is the time. We haven't an event like this in 12 years. We have unbelievably low interest rates. If you want to move a business interest to your son or daughter because they're active in the business, this is the time. This is the best, and this is the optimal time to manage assets in the most tax efficient manner possible. So don't miss this opportunity.
Eric, I was going to ask you also, what's the future outlook for estate and gift exemptions at this point?
Right. We have a battle cry in the estate planning world that we're using today. It's use it or lose it. The current federal exemptions right now are $11,580,000 per person. That means during my lifetime, I can give anyone in the world, exclude my wife, exclude charity, $11.58 million without causing a transfer tax. That's set to go, it gets reset back after January 1st, 2026 to amount to $5 million, adjusted for inflation. We know that Vice President Biden wants to reduce the exemptions if he gets to office to somewhere between 5 and 3.5 million. So we're actively encouraging our clients to use the exemption today so that they're not stuck in a position where right now, if you're married, you can move over $23 million of assets without attracting a tax. If you wait to 2021, 2022, when exemptions could fall back to 7 million, you have effectively lost the opportunity to shift $16 million tax-free to your family. Or if you're an Illinois resident, you just cost your family $8 million in tax when you combine the federal and Illinois exemptions.
Katie, I was just going to ask you, what's your number one piece of advice to investors wondering what to do with their portfolios at this moment?
Sure. I think the number one piece of it is, and Bob had mentioned it, is having a plan, being comfortable with it, and sticking to it. And often that's not just from an investment side of things and making sure that your allocations are on track, but making sure that you're pulling in your wealth and estate planning attorneys, making sure you're pulling in your CPAs and having them all be part of the conversation. We really try to include as many trusted advisors as we can in our client meetings, because it's vital to make sure that the assumptions that we have and the way we're moving forward checks off all the boxes kind of across the table for the client. So it's making sure that the clients are kind of comfortable with where they are, know why they're positioned the way they are, and that's not something that happens overnight. It's a longer term process to really get to know our clients well. I think that's when we can encourage them to change things, and it's when we can also kind of walk them off the ledge a little bit as they get nervous. So it's making sure that they're comfortable with kind of the way that they're moving forward.
Bob, same question. What's your number one piece of advice to investors wondering what to do next with their portfolio?
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, and I would echo what Katie said. I think it comes back to, having, well thought out strategies, both from a financial planning standpoint and marrying that, if you will, to the investment process. And I really don't think that is necessarily something that comes out of markets just like this. You should always, it's a dynamic process, and you should always be reviewing your plans. And you never, I think this was mentioned earlier, one way to really undermine a successful investment program over time is to be in a position of having to make, again, bad decisions in hindsight at inopportune times. And so I think that for, my one overall sort of strategic piece of advice to people would be, make sure that you thought it through, that you lifted all the stones and looked under them in terms of issues that might impact your life from a financial standpoint, not necessarily investment, but other sides of your holistic financial world, and just make sure that everything is being covered, because we're in a period, and we're always in periods where there's a high level of uncertainty, and we can all have our opinions on where the markets are going and so on, but we never want to structure a portfolio that's just based on a single factor, that we know inflation is going to take off, so we're going to structure it that way, because the odds are you're going to be wrong, and that doesn't work. And so again, I would get back to having sort of an all-weather portfolio that people can sleep at night with. You need to be able to everyone be on the same page, and again, not be in a position of making bad decisions. And if you can do that, then I think you can weather almost anything that comes down the pike.
Stuart, your number one piece of advice to investors?
Well, I guess it kind of dovetails on everything that's been said on this panel is right now is definitely not the time to get complacent. As you're looking at, I think people are feeling a little bit euphoric because you had a 36% drop in the market and a 30+% rebound, and we're only down, I don't know, what's it, 6% off the highs, somewhere along those lines. But from what we've learned from history, whenever we've seen recessions, they tend to last not months, not quarters, but sometimes years before the market unwinds. And to think that we've been through this global pandemic, top to bottom, without any real danger or long-term effects in the market in 33 days, I think is wishful thinking. So don't get complacent and think that this is all over. And so if you don't have a particular plan in place and you don't have your risk adjusted accordingly, and you think that you sidestepped it and you don't need to make any changes, I would say go back to the drawing board and make sure that your risk is in line with your portfolio. History would suggest, I know what they say is, people say the most expensive words on Wall Street are, it's different this time. And you'd say, okay, the world's not going to end because you can only be right on that one time, and then it still doesn't matter. So if it's not different this time, and what I would argue is, in a recession, what we saw in the past is not being different means it's going to last a lot longer than we think. And if we have kind of close to Great Depression unemployment, even if we unwound half of that almost immediately as we got back to work, we're still at unemployment levels that we saw after the Great Recession. So get your alignment, your risk alignment in place now if you haven't done it. Talk to Eric about your estate plan if you haven't done that. You're going to have another opportunity to do this, I think. Hate to be a downer.
This is yeah, I know. Question for Bob and Eric on this one: is this a good time for individuals to update their personal estate plans? And then what's really involved in that process? Bob, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll start and defer to Eric as the estate attorney. But I think that it's always a good time to be reviewing your estate plan, and same goes for your financial plan. It is, again, from our perspective, it is absolutely a dynamic process that for people, our clients, again, many have very complicated, complex financial lives, and they should be reviewing plans on an ongoing basis. Obviously, when you go through downturns like this, and as Stuart mentioned, the pandemic is a disturbing reason for a downturn, but they're always disturbing when markets have this kind of volatility. But it does provide the opportunity to sort of reassess whether there are any issues that have changed in your mind, at least, whether you should be working with your estate planning attorney on this. From a financial planning standpoint, we go through the same dynamic process on an ongoing basis with our clients. And in terms of whether this can be done at this time in a remote environment, absolutely. We work very closely with estate planners, estate attorneys, like Eric, tax accountants, and so on. And it's seamless right now getting some of this work done. And so, we always believe that it is a dynamic process, and this time would be no different for that.
Right. Eric?
I lost a little bit of the sound there, but I will add that, yes, you can do everything remotely. You have a captive audience. Everyone's home. Everyone's available. Everyone can think about these issues. One thing that you should know from a legal perspective, that trusts in Illinois do not need witnesses. So 99% of the estate planning can be done by simply printing the document at home or electronic signatures. Everything else, wills, powers of attorney, may need a witness or two, but that's really ancillary documents in the big scheme of things. So don't let the process of the difficulty of getting witnesses slow you down. And again, I've been seeing a trend line where people have been doing more and more of these estate planning over the phone. It's just March and April, we've we turn to a Zoom, Go meeting, whatever, it's business Skype platform to do the same thing. So yes, this is the time to think about these issues, and with all these opportunities that are circulating out there, you can start that process now. And what you need to do to begin that process is list your assets. Who owns them? Who should benefit from those assets? And another thing you should think about is, if you're not around, who should control those assets? And in the business world, who should become the next business owner in your company? Those are the issues that you start thinking about. We get on the phone with Bob, Stuart, and Katie, formulating a plan. We turn that into a blueprint, a schematic that shows you exactly how assets will flow. It's kind of like a catalog you would get at a car dealership. You pick the features you want. We'll explain what's good, what's bad with each approach. It best meets your family objectives, whether it's charitable, whether it's educational, won't corporate at all. And once you bless that transaction, once your investment advisors approve it and understand the cash flow needs that you have and your next generation, you can then draft the documents and get it out for execution. That's the process.
Just a question for all of you, kind of a final before we take actually a few questions that came in from our audience early on. But what other advice are you offering clients at this time? So Katie, you want to take that one?
Sure, I think some of it had been covered in some of these other questions, but it's making sure that not only are you comfortable with how your portfolio is positioned, but you understand your estate plan. We've seen wonderful portfolios kind of get blown up because an estate plan is in shambles. And maybe your estate plan was perfect 5 years ago, but tax law and estate law has changed so much that you need to go through that process. And so I think more than anything, it's making sure that you're keeping your wealth advisor up to date, you're keeping your CPA, your attorneys up to date, and that they're working together. Because I really think when you start segmenting out all of these duties, things get missed in translation. And so it's making sure that all of your partners are really working well together as a team. So it's making sure you've got everybody on the same page at all times.
Bob,
what other advice are you offering?
Well, I think that, again, Katie's right, a lot of this has been covered, but, to be, I think, successful as individuals, as advisors, and so on, we need, or certainly from an investment standpoint, from an investor standpoint, they need to have both financial capital and emotional capital to be successful. And what that means is, obviously, you need to be positioned properly as you go through any kind of market environment. You need to have adequate liquidity, you need to have adequate balance and diversification, so that you can take advantage of opportunities. As financial capital, the emotional capital on that point is you need to be disciplined. You can't, as Stuart mentioned earlier, you can't let your emotions get in the way of making good decisions. And we have, as advisors, need to help navigate our clients through these kind of markets. And so I think that our advice would be, again, if you have a structured plan that makes sense for that investor, and that you can keep the emotion out of it and just be disciplined and stay the course, I think you'll be successful. And that, in the end, is what we're trying to accomplish for all the people that we work with.
Stuart, same question.
Sure. So you always want to say you don't want to change your long-term plan for a short-term event. But I think we, as advisors, and I'll put experts in quotations here, get paid for, is to know the difference between what is a short-term event and what is a long-term event. And we, again, try to use a lot of math and we do use a tactical aspect of our portfolio analysis, because most of my clients have what's called asymmetric risk, which basically means the risk to the downside hurts a lot worse than the benefit to the upside. If I tell somebody that, hey, I made them 30% on their portfolio, they might shake my hand. They would say, great, give me 2 thumbs up. But their life probably isn't going to change. If I lose them 30% on their portfolio, they might go into a panic and they might feel like they have to go back to work again, or they can't do what they wanted to do with their life. So part of that tactical allocation that we use helps mitigate some of that concern. And then there was one other thing. I know Katie talked about structured products too, having a downside buffer. Some of them, actually, the characteristics are fantastic. Some have a full principal protection. So there is not just a buffer. You get all your money back if the market doesn't go your way. And even some have what's called a dual directional. So they're leveraged to the upside. And to part of the way, if you had a negative 20% return, your client actually gets a positive 20% return. So we've done a lot of math on what's the likelihood of these various scenarios coming out, what's the expected value, how you'd mitigate any of that risk if there was indeed a month that didn't go your way. And so again, what we offer is tactical and then mathematical analysis.
Great, Eric?
Yeah, I just want to re-emphasize a point that Katie just made. There is power in numbers when everyone on your team is talking and working together, whether it's everyone on this panel, whether it's an accountant, whether it's a relative. If everyone's talking, team plays well, the estate plan, the portfolio, everything will work 100 times better. It's critical that you don't forget that step. It's so easy to keep, it's so easy to want to exclude people from the process, but don't. The other thing that I would recommend is, if you have an estate plan, look at it again. Some plan's been sitting in file cabinets for 5 years, and no one has any sense of whether the people that are named in those documents are appropriate in 2020 to act on behalf of your family. Sometimes you have trusts that are irrevocable, that were designed so that, well, maybe I can't change it. Well, 10, 20 years ago, a irrevocable trust was truly irrevocable. But in Illinois and a variety of other states, they've enacted laws called decanting statutes. It's like when you take wine and you put it into a decanter. Well, that same type of concept is being used today to fix trusts. So they work in 2020 in a way that you didn't think you can fix 5, 10, 20 years ago. So please look at your estate plan, think about who's named, who benefits, what powers these people have. Should you do something to fix those today before those documents are no longer changeable because an event in your life?
It's great. Well, I thought we would have more time for questions, but it looks like we're about at it. So I want to thank you, Bob, Katie, Stuart, and Eric for joining us today. Great conversation. I hope everyone enjoyed the discussion, that you leave with some key takeaways and crucial information that will help you in your own wealth management as we navigate through the current times. I encourage you to visit the firm's websites, which you can see below, for additional information and resources related to our discussion. We'll also be sending those links to you in a follow-up email later today. Please stay connected with us by visiting chicagobusiness.com for more up-to-date news and insights. And thank you all for tuning in this afternoon. Stay well and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.